bookworms. Today I'm going to be doing my 2021 TBR video. So this is a list of books that I really want to read in the coming year. Did I say 2021? I hope I did. I feel like we said 2020 so often in 2020 just because it was like, this is a crazy year. And now I'm like, am I saying the right year? This is a list of books that I am planning on reading in 2021. I love making this list every year. I think it's really fun to like pick out the things that I'm most excited about. In the past, this has kind of been like a little bit of a cursed list because I usually tend to get to about half of them or slightly more or slightly less depending on the year. Last year was like my year of extreme mood reading, so I did not do very good on this list, but I do feel like my reading habits have kind of evolved over this past year, and these are all books that I'm really excited to get to that I feel really confident about reading in 2021. May regret saying that in the future. I don't think so. Like, I have a really good feeling about this list, so we'll see where the year takes us. Also notable is that this list is all backlist books that I already have sitting on my bookshelves. They're books from my physical TBR that I really want to get to during this year, and then I will have a separate list of anticipated releases that I'm excited to read in 2021, like new books coming out that I don't own yet. But these are all ones that I own and that are backlist. First up is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. I really love the Stormlight Archive series. I read Way of Kings and I read Words of Radiance last year, and Words of Radiance actually ended up being my favorite book of the year if I had to like only pick one book. And okay, so my mindset about the series kind of changed because in November, the fourth book, Rhythm of War, came out and everyone was so excited for that one. And I was really excited for it too because my plan had been to like binge all of these books and catch up and then be able to read Rhythm of War along with the community like when it first came out, and I was gonna be so excited about it. And then I kind of thought about it and I was like, why would I rush myself through these books that I love so much? Like, that just doesn't make sense. So instead of doing that, I decided to read Words of Radiance, which obsessed, like I said, definitely one of my favorite books of last year. And then instead of diving right into Oathbringer so that I could dive right into Rhythm of War, I was like, as soon as I catch up on these books, I'm going to have to wait potentially years between books, and that just doesn't seem appealing to me. So instead of doing that, I decided to take my time with the series. I'm definitely going to be reading Oathbringer this year. I wouldn't be surprised if I read Rhythm of War as well, but I definitely want to just kind of go at my own pace. I don't want to feel pressured to be caught up on everything because that's ridiculous. And I don't want to rush through something that I'm really loving. Oh good, I only put 12 books on this list with the intention of potentially reading one per month. I know some people do like match the year, so like 21 books to read in 2021, but I'm like, that's so many between that and anticipated releases. I would just feel like I didn't have the room to pick other things if they arise, so I'm sticking to 12. Next up is Unlocked by Shannon Messenger. This is book 8.5 in the Keeper of the Lost City series. This is another series that I'm really loving. This book just came out in November. It actually came out the same day as Rhythm of War, but this is a middle grade fantasy series and I just devoured this series. It is so good. I really love the characters. Like, they're so well crafted, and it's all about elves, which I really enjoy. So I don't know, I just love the series, and the final book is supposed to come out this year. I really hope that it doesn't end up getting pushed back because we haven't gotten like any information about it yet, but the series is ending with book 9. So Shannon Messenger actually came out with this like surprise novella, which is a supplement to the other books in the series. I do think that there's a lot of like information about the world in the beginning portion of the book, and then the novella is actually like the new content is actually only a portion of this, so it's not nearly as long as it seems, but I definitely want to read it in order to be caught up for the last book. This is one that I feel good about not rushing through, but being caught up on because there's only one book left, so I can't be waiting that much longer, I hope. Next, I have The Royal We by Heather Cox and Jessica Morgan. I've wanted to read this book for years. This is a book that has been on my TBR for longer than like most of the books that I have on my physical TBR. I don't know why I haven't read it. I really love stories about royals. Like, that's one of my things that I'm drawn to, is like, I just love things about royals, and I really think that I'm gonna love this. It's a fictionalized story, but it's like heavily inspired by William and Kate, and the sequel to it, which people had been waiting for years, finally just came out in June of 2020. So I'm hoping that I end up enjoying this book, and then I'll likely pick up the sequel if I do, which I think I will, because royals. Next, I want to read Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I have read all of Carrie's other series, the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. I actually got an arc of Stalking Jack the Ripper at Book Expo the year before it was debuting. It was her debut novel, and I loved it, and I have just been following her career ever since. I thought that whole series was excellent from start to finish, and I'm so excited to see what it is that she's going to do next. This book is like an Italian-inspired fantasy, and I've been told that it's good to read in like the fall season. It's very autumnal, but I don't think I can wait that long. I'm probably gonna read it earlier in the year. And it's about witches, and it just sounds excellent. I've heard really good things from people who have already read it, and it's also only a duology, and I believe the second book is going to be coming out in the latter half of the year, but we don't really have any info on that yet. So this is one that I want to read so that I can also read the conclusion when it comes out. But I'm quite excited because I've really loved Carrie's books in the past. Next, I have From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I talked about this book in my January TBR video. I wonder what order I'm going to post these in. Or maybe that's a spoiler and you will see it in my January TBR video. Time will tell. I've really been looking for another like lighthearted fantasy series to get invested in, because I feel like I just haven't found one that I like super love in a while. All of the ones that mean the most to me have ended, and I think that this one has some great potential. Pretty optimistic about it, and I'm actually going to be reading it once I finish reading my current read, which is a book about royals, Its Majesty. But this is definitely the second book that I'm reading in 2021, so already going to be knocking one off of this list right in January, which is bodes well for the year. Next is a nonfiction book, and that is I Like to Watch by Emily Nussbaum. You've definitely heard me talk about this book on my channel before if you have stuck with me through the very long hiatus that I took. I got this one in the beginning of 2020, and I just never got around to reading it, but I still feel just as excited about it as I did the day that I picked it up. Emily Nussbaum is the creator of the New York Magazine Approval Matrix, which I loved when I was in college. I had such a blast looking at that every single week in the magazine when people like still read physical magazines. But I'm very much looking forward to this. This is a collection. It's not, I think I said that. It's a nonfiction book, and it's a collection of essays all about television and pop culture, and I for sure watch a lot of TV, so I'm very curious to see which franchises and shows and stuff that she's going to discuss, and whether or not our opinions on them align, and also maybe I'll just like find out some fun facts about shows that I didn't know in the past. But I think that this one's going to be really fun to read. Next on my list is Bloody Rose by Nicholas Eames. So last year, me, Alexa, Andrew, and Alexa's husband Mackie made some grand plans of reading Bloody Rose, like buddy reading together, all four of us, because that's our little D&D group, and all four of us loved the first book. This series is basically like a D&D campaign. So we wanted to read this one together and then film a really fun like review video for you guys with all four of us talking about it. Then there was a pandemic. So we came up with these plans in early March, so you can see how long ago that was. And then I kept putting off reading it because I was like, okay, well, like we kept discussing and being like, should we read it yet? We kept being like, you know what, maybe we'll read it like in April because this is surely going to end soon. And unbeknownst to us and the rest of the world, like we still haven't gotten to see each other in person because that's not something that you're allowed to do at the moment. None of us have read the book, but I feel like I've put it off long enough, and Perhaps we will still film that video idea that I had in the future. I mean, I hope that we do once it's safe to do so, but for me, I really just want to read it already because I loved the first book so much, so it's just time. I actually just had to go and steal this from Andrew because he's also planning on reading it, and I think it's going to be the first book that he reads in 2021. Next, I have Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and I'm just realizing now that this is actually also on my January TBR, so I guess I'm getting 2 books off of this list in 1 month, which is great. But this is a book all about creativity, and from what I've heard, it's incredibly inspiring, and I really want to read it and just see what all of the hype is about and hopefully get that inspired feeling. I mean, I do feel it now because I'm excited to be back here, but I think you know what I mean. It's also the January book pick for the Bad on Paper podcast, which I really enjoy listening to. So I'm very much looking forward to reading this one and then listening to their episode about it. I know that the hosts have read it multiple times, and we'll see if I end up being one of those people that rereads it every year too. Next on my list is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This book has gotten a lot of buzz in the last year, and I actually got a copy of it for Christmas, which I was really excited about. Like, almost no one buys me books for Christmas because they, I don't know, get confused. They're like, I don't know what she already has. And I'm like, please just buy me books. Just look at my wish list and buy me books. That's all that I want. And I finally got books, like a lot of books in 2020, and it was the best. So this was one of the ones that I received. I cannot wait to read it. I'm sure that everyone already knows the premise because it's been talked about so much in the past year, but just in case you don't, it follows 2 siblings, and one of the siblings is white passing and the other one is not. She has much darker skin, and each of them takes a very different path in life. The white passing sister marries a white man and has children who are also white passing, and like completely like denounces her past. She doesn't acknowledge that she is half black. She just like lives her life as if she is a white person. And the other sister embraces being black, and she obviously goes down a completely different route. And I believe, I don't know if the sisters reconnect or if like the kids of the sisters meet up at some point, but it's just about coming to terms with their identity, finding out like this part of themselves that they didn't know, and then grappling with the different life choices that they've made. And it just sounds really interesting. It was also on like a ton of best books of the year lists, so I just keep getting more excited about this one. Next is Wild at Heart by K.A. Tucker. This is the sequel to The Simple Wilds, which I loved. That was one of my favorite books in the year that I read it, and I don't know why I haven't gotten to the second book yet. I definitely heard some mixed reviews of it earlier on in the year when it first debuted. I think the first one is traditionally published and this one is indie published, which is interesting, but later in the year, I ended up reading some really positive reviews about it, and it kind of reignited my interest. And there was also a novella that came out, a book 2.5. I think it was called Forever Wild, and that was like a Christmas story. So I ended up picking that one up as well with the intention of reading this one and then reading that one around Christmas, which is past, so I failed on that. But I still do really want to get to this one, and then we'll see if I read the Christmas one around Christmas or if I just go for it. This is about a girl who has a sick father in Alaska that she really never knew, and she ends up traveling there to kind of get to know him and take care of him after finding out that he has cancer. And it was just so good, and I cried so much. It was such an emotional read, and I really liked the romance in it, and I really liked the Alaskan setting, so I'm very excited to get to this one. Next is the most intimidating book on my list, and that is Dune by Frank Herbert. You might be thinking, isn't Oathbringer more intimidating since that's over 1,000 pages? But not to me. I tend not to love reading sci-fi, which is something that I discovered about myself. I love watching sci-fi. There are very few genres that I would enjoy more than watching a sci-fi show or a sci-fi movie. But when it comes to reading, unless it's like a Star Wars book, I tend to struggle with sci-fi. However, Dune is one of those quintessential books that it's just stuck with so many people and it's inspired so many other stories within the genre. I know it heavily inspired Star Wars, and especially like the first episode of the second season of Mandalorian. I think that's like pretty much Dune. But yeah, so I wanted to read this book last year. I had the intention of reading it before the film came out, but obviously the film got delayed. So I kept putting off reading it, and now I believe the film is scheduled to come out this year, so I'm planning on reading it this year. My brother actually read it last year. He read a couple of them, not even just the first one. Like, he went deeper into the series, and he's obsessed. He got his fiance to read it, and he's been pushing me to read it ever since. I've heard from so many people that I particularly am going to love this book, so we'll see if they are correct. I'm nervous. I wasn't as nervous until I realized that there are no chapters. It's just text forever, which I don't do well with. I tend to like books when there are short chapters, but this is just going to be like a marathon. So it might be something that I read slowly over the year. It might be something that I end up loving and binge read. It's a mystery. I'm excited to try it out. And finally, the last book on this list is another new book that I received for Christmas, and that is The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. I've been wanting to read an Ann Patchett book for years now, and I haven't. The one that I was mostly looking at was Commonwealth, but this is the new one that just came out in 2020, I think, or 2019, I can't remember, but it's her newest release. If I like it, then I'm definitely going to tackle some of her backlist. My future sister-in-law gave this to me, and she said that she actually already read it and she really enjoyed it. She said that it was a very kind of slow burn book and character driven, and you really have to get to know everyone like before you get into it, which sounds up my alley. I tend to really enjoy character driven novels. I'm excited, and I'm excited to get to talk to her about it as I'm reading it. And that is the final book. So those are the 12 books that I am planning on reading in 2021. I feel really good about this stack of books. Like, I'm very excited about each and every one of them on here. The only one that I'm nervous about is Dune, but it's something that I've wanted to read for so long that I have to just, bite the bullet and do it. Let me know if there are any books that you are like dying to get to in 2021, particularly backlist books. And also let me know if you read any of the books that I have on my list and if I should like bump them up or push them back. Actually, if any of them are not good, just don't tell me because hearing negative opinions will probably demotivate me from picking it up as soon, and I don't want that to happen. So that's all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!